HQ, and we're live. Hey, it only took 5 years, Star Trek. Today on episode 247 of Trekland Tuesdays live with Dr. Trek. That's me, Larry Nemechek, coming at you right here from the heart of Trekland through Portal 47 for some clarity, sanity, and the big picture in things Star Trek. Hey, it's another Tuesday. Welcome back, everybody. If you're a regular, and if you're a first timer joining us, welcome yourself. You'll see right now that the chat is populating, if it's not already there. We've got some good folks here coming to stay with us. I'm going to get off on a little bit of a rant here. Actually, today it won't be a rant. It'll be more of an observation, a recollection. And then we'll take a short break. For those who aren't watching live for those who are watching live later, it'll be it. But we'll have a short break. We'll look at the Parrot Analytics TV streaming ratings in the US, and then we will get to chat then. So if you're coming at me on any of the platforms, dive into the chat. Just know that Facebookers will only see the Facebook. Everybody else will see everything. And Twitchers, I'm not ignoring you. We will do chat in a few minutes. Okay? So just jumping in to look around. Hey, we're ongoingly here. We've got Discovery. We've got this master plan now. We know what's happening. We also know, though, that, hey, congrats to Doug Jones, who won a specially newly named award. There have been Lifetime Achievement Awards from the Makeup and Hairstylists Guild here in Hollywood. Sir Patrick won it just a couple of years ago. Mike Westmore and Brent Spiner presented the award, but they've named that now, and Doug Jones is the first recipient, with none other than Sonequa giving him the award. That was looked very spiffy in his high-necked militaristic prince outfit there. Had a lot of fun with that. But anyway, good wishes out to him. Good wishes to everybody who's working hard on all the shows, cranking them out, whether they're in Toronto or here in LA. And what aspect of the show they're on. It's the new reality. The new reality is that nobody is antsy about who and what and when and where. I mean, there's some antsiness, and we've got things down the pike coming. But it's a new world. We know that Discovery will roll out a couple more shows. That we know that Picard is debuting season 2 in a couple of weeks. I'll tell you, the review screeners are already out to folks. The preview for the show is coming up in just a few days. The digital online premiere, still pre-COVID. And the world is moving right along. And then after that will be the Strange New Worlds debut that everyone is waiting for in May. And then we'll catch up with the Lower Decks gang and or the Prodigy Kids in some form or fashion. Now, that's where we are. What today's topic is kind of, it's a little bit of the Janus January thing, looking forward and backward, but it's such a marker. It's such a marker because, personally, this last weekend was Gallifrey 1 convention, which is a big Who convention, which is maybe the biggest Who convention in normal times in North America for Doctor Who fans. It's for more than that because one of the prime movers and shakers over there, Sean Lyon, told me 10, 12 years ago, sure, come on over and be a guest, Larry, because even Who people need more than Trek. It was also true that for a long time they were in their fallow period, like we had our fallow period, and they tended to offset. When we were sky high, Who was taking a decade off, and then when we took the 12 years off is when they were getting reestablished. But I always go, and yeah, there's a lot of crossover fandom, and it's the first convention of the year in a lot of ways, and it feels fresh, and it's kind of wintry, but not always. But most of all, it was the last live convention I was at before the pandemic hit in 2020. And yes, we've had the pre-Omicron wave come back to Trek Vegas, and we've had the mini San Diego Comic-Con Thanksgiving do up, and I even just was at a small city con in Yuma, Arizona. So it's not the first, it's not like goalpost to goalpost here, but it was certainly a marker in my mind the last time I was in LA's Con Central, the LAX Marriott. The last time I was in there for a convention was Gallifrey. And that, yes, given that mix, they went at it half size. They intentionally scaled everything back by half. There was a lot less pressing up, but still a lot of people, a lot of good times, a lot of fun, especially for the Who folk. I'm there mining, helping to support the Trek people, and there were Trek faces there. Dominic and and Andy Robinson were there on Friday. Some of the original series guest star folks came by on Sunday, made a pass through. Congratulations also to Dominic and Connor for launching their podcast, the Shuttle Pod Show. Yeah, so it was a fun time. What's interesting, though, is I always laugh about it. Gallifrey always has what I call the token Trek panel, and then I usually do something of my own. And this year I just made it simple, but also informative, and did our State of the Trek fan forum that I do at conventions, where I kind of kick things off, throw the topics out there, and then let fans take it from there and let people compare and contrast. And I'm just going to say this. I love to talk about how the dealers at Comic-Cons compare fandoms and tell me, oh, well, Star Trek has the nicest fandom. But I want to say that I think only because they're so insular and don't turn up a lot at Comic-Cons, those dealers don't see Who fandom. Because I think a rival for Star Trek fandom is that Who fandom. Maybe it's the British DNA, don't you know? Or I don't know. I don't think it's all that timey-wimey to say that I think Who fandom is as nice, even more genteel maybe, than Trek fandom. So if you're at a WhoCon with overtones of the next biggest franchise involved being Trek, it's a pretty nice thing. So I'm going to say this also. When we've been live at cons, and I know any of you all that go also, this famous, the last 5, 6, 7 years, the online toxicity of fandom seems to evaporate when you get live. When you get people face to face, that all seems to go away. So either all those people are butthurt secretly because they don't have the money to attend, or they're so far out in the boonies, they're cut off some civilization and can't get to anything, or that's just a function of the dissonance of the not cognitive dissonances of the aesthetic distance they have, not being in anyone's face. Because it's rare that now I'm not talking about fan debates. I'm not talking about good old bar fights over fandom and opinions. That's awesome, and that's what fandom is. I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. So not only does that disappear at live cons, at Gallifrey, it's especially on a nice level. But even then, both at the big panel, my buddy James Kerr was one of the other people on the Fivesome panel, and then on my solo time, I had to stop and think about how far we've come. Because when you open up the floor to fans, just like I try to do here every week, maybe in initial reaction, as I bounce off with the Portales, whenever we have a chance to do that, talk about current events, it's amazing to me that it was 5 years ago. 5 years ago, we knew that Discovery's first season, the debut of Discovery, was going to happen probably sometime in 2017. There'd been already a year's worth of delays from when the initial start dates had been named. So we knew there was tension there. But we're right at about 5 years, pandemic and not, of the time we knew that Discovery was probably coming in the fall, sometime in there. And of course, everything was tight-lipped coming out of CBS All Access. Nobody wanted to speak. Everything was such a tight lid on security. You'd think it was the D-Day invasion. And that had to strike me. We started off talking with folks in the audience, and I thought about how far we'd come. Yeah, we had one person from across the pond who was not upset, but just kind of eye-rolling about the whole debacle with Netflix and Discovery and Star Trek and the coming of Paramount Plus, which in the last couple of weeks there've been some headlines. We talked about it last week. It was breaking, I think. In the UK and the Caribbean and other parts by mid-year. The heart of Europe, though, is not going to get Paramount Plus until the end of the year. But I couldn't help thinking where we were 5 years ago. The discourse in this room, and we had disagreements But the savviness in the room was so far beyond. We had different people talking about how they tried to watch all Trek, but here's their issue with Discovery. I had opinions about how Discovery was not their favorite. I had opinions about how Discovery was their favorite. I did have 2 or 3 people stand up and say, yes, I think Lower Decks represents the best of all Trek. It honors everything, and I can't wait for more. There were a couple of gasps in the room, and I'm talking about a room of, on one day, maybe 40 people, on the other day, maybe 25 or 30, in a smallish room, not in a cavern. So we were actually close enough that we could hear each other gasp or giggle or chortle or guffaw or harumph, okay? And there were a couple of gasps when that came out. A couple of people thought that Prodigy was the best of all, and it's tickled them. And so there we go. This is a room at a convention which skews older, but by the time I went back through my show of hands poll, not what was your first Trek, but what's your favorite, the favorites were starting to splinter up. And it wasn't all original and next gen. DS9 carried its weight. Voyager was a little underrepresented, but there were 4 or 5 hands for the 2 animateds. But most of all was the discussion. Now that show of hands kind of illuminated where we were coming from, which is why I do it. Not a lot of kids of parents. It was mainly singles and couples. But after we went around the horn, people talked about everything, promotion, the strengths and weaknesses of the series. It was a very, what you would expect, a very audience-friendly discussion. One woman at the beginning talked about she watched Discovery, how she was disappointed in it, though, and here's why. And most people acknowledging that it was definitely evolving. 2 people in the room, I've started to hear this. I'm starting to hear from people who liked Discovery more the first 2 seasons than when they jumped ahead, which makes no sense to me, either from a stability of writing, storytelling standpoint, or the good old canon background looking like they're just a fish out of water fit. But there you go. That's people's opinion. And they'll tell you why. They'll list all 4 or 5 reasons why. And it's all good. I heard some people talking about why they thought that they were sad that Discovery seemed like it was slowing down and wasn't as rip-roaring as it had been and wasn't as adult. Adult meaning they weren't afraid to jump into not gratuitous, but storytelling gore. And, Ripper. Think Ripper slapping around poor Landry. Think about the horror and terror of those early episodes while they're trying to get a tone. And they're probably spending money at the wazoo. Yeah. We had room for diversity of opinions and people talking about how I've seen people appreciating how there seem to be more thoughtful character scenes in Discovery, especially the last year. And I had people criticizing that fact and having everybody kind of blink twice when I brought up the fact that was probably COVID driving that. And everyone thought, oh, I mean, some people may have, but enough people, that was news to them. So there we go. The highlight of the day, though, to me, on my solo day was a young woman, I'm going to guess in her mid-20s, not a fresh-faced student at all, but younger than most everybody else in the room, but she'd been paying her own way in life a while. And she said, she's sitting here at a HooCon in one of the 2 Trek panels of the weekend, and we talked about how she had never been she just started off. She patiently waited. She was finally about the 6th or 7th or 8th person. Talked about how she'd never been a Star Trek fan. Didn't dislike it. And as I prodded her for questions, she obviously was a Who fan. She had other fandoms that she enjoyed. She never disliked Trek. She just never got around to it. I didn't ask her if she was intimidated by the 800 hours thing. But she said no. But it was the pandemic and facing all that time. And she said, you know what? Why not now? I said, well, what did you do? And she said, I started with the original series. I started with the Cage and went forward. And you could hear the room kind of go, ooh. And I watched everything in order. Ooh. And then she said, and when we got to the overlaps, TNG DS9 and then DS9 Voyager, she said, I bifurcated and I watched them all in aired order back and forth between the series with the movies popped in where they should have been. And I said, ooh, good on you. All the way through. Enterprise, Kelvin's, then Discovery, yada, yada. And she said, I said, well, what do you think? She said, I loved it. I get it. I totally get it. But I also see why everybody thought Discovery ruined the canon. Which almost had me fall in my chair. And she said, no, but I watched it all and I get it. And it's like the last 5 to 10 to 30 years unlocked for her, which was an awesome thing to see. And the room was kind of in awe. And she was being very humble. She was just sitting in her chair, just talking like this, just with her hands in her lap, just looking at me. I wish I'd got her name afterwards. But it really, the whole effect, both days with the 5-person panel with 40 people, 40 to 60 people, and the smaller room with media, but with 20 to 30. Both days, the tone was, well, here we are. We got a lot of Star Trek, and we all have our differences of opinion. It's a convention which never was raucous, but I remember being at conventions. Most of all, 5 years. It only took 5 years, Star Trek. Not a single person talked about the delivery system and the price tag. In 5 years, and before there was Disney Plus, and before there was Apple TV Plus, before there was Discover, I should say, Discover Plus, before all of that, there was Peacock. There was little old CBS All Access out there trying to turn the corner and have original programming. And they were the tip of the spear. They were the cutting edge of the whole, I'm not paying for it. The whole app revolution, the whole streaming revolution. We are not where we were 5 years ago with that. Nary a word was said, aside from the Netflix, Paramount Plus kerfluffle for most of the rest of the world, for the global markets there. Aside from that, and aside from the breaking up of Prodigy in a weird way, thank you, post on Discovery being delayed, which you can't blame anybody for that. No, it really brought it back to me how that first year, 5 years ago, we almost never got to, even into 2018, we couldn't get to the content of the show because half of the hour was taken up with people getting it off their chest about paying, which, yes, was the way of the world, but people hadn't lived that way. People who don't live in media and they don't live with all this stuff didn't see the coming storm. And we've gone there now. And now there's so many more choices. And now Paramount Plus is battling back to be the number 2, number 3, at least until there's some more mergers, battling back to be a home for genre and original. We'll try to get some numbers. I saw some numbers last week. I don't have them here with me. But they're hanging in there doing, and obviously Star Trek is coming back. They're going to make plans. There's going to be 3 SpongeBob spinoff movies. So yay on the newly remarried brand, which we can now call Paramount again. But I was sitting there watching this respectful discussion, which we tend to have in cons, which we tend to really have at certain cons, at Trek Vegas and at Galley for starters. It really reminded me of how far we've come in 5 years. And 2 of that was pandemic. I know. People would have gone one way or the other, north or south, either more settled or even more spastic about it. But no, that's where we are. As we come out of the shadows and as we reopen for cons, as the Trek cruise prepares to sail on Saturday, and everybody be safe who's going on the cruise, if you are. Be safe and happy and come back with lots of good stories. As we set sail with conventions reopening and trying to get back on schedule, as we've all lived through, I was doing this before, you will remember, but as so much of the world, much less of fandom, has adjusted to the beauty and the miracle that is streaming, not just during pandemics, but maybe if you are out in the middle of the boonies, you're having Star Trek brought right to you besides some professional provider. All these changes made me think about what the last time I met at Gallifrey, much less 5 years since Kurtzman Trek, since the modern era, since the whole paradigm in Star Trek, and what we talked about over the weekend, what streaming looked like. And it wasn't just getting used to the idea of paying for an app, but it was also, what does streaming look like? And yes, I had to take a little brag and talk about how I was trying to kid and soothe all the aggrieved souls in 2017 and 2018 about the serialized structure, especially the baby steps in learning how to do Trek in a serialized structure lens. That, 5 or 6, 7 shows in, we'll have this radical notion to have self-contained shows again, which exactly is where Strange New Worlds is. It's like, let them have their pendulum swing, and it will swing back. And here we are already. Thank you, Ensign Mount, for if upping the game. I don't know that Section 31 would not have been just as serialized as everybody else so far. So yes, it's a discussion talking about, we talked about and of course, the favorite thing, we've just lived through the last year of the whole animation expectation, the low bar for it, and suddenly everybody, each in their own way, falling in love the same or differently with Lower Decks and Prodigy, and anxious to see more. It's not the same world it was 3 years ago, much less 5. But we've really been whipsawed a lot since 2017. And I'm coming up on 5 years of doing this myself. And we've been here to talk about it and see it all, which has been kind of amazing. So, yeah, I just don't know, is the same way. I will never forget the guy in the back left of the room at Phoenix Comic-Con about 2012, 2013. The time when Starfleet Intelligence blog said that I said that CBS and Netflix had a deal for a new Star Trek show. I announced this in a panel in 2013. Right. Thank you very much. No, what I'd said was, keep watching Star Trek on Netflix, and the more that counter spins, the faster we'll have Star Trek back, is what I said. But I'll never forget the guy in the back corner of the room. He said, you know what? I came in with the Kelvin movies. He basically repeated what this young lady had said this weekend. He came in with the Kelvins. He went back to the beginning and watched all Star Trek. And he wound up saying, and now I can totally say, I know the Kelvins are crap. And he could say that. Everybody's going to have a different opinion. But he was one who came in with them. He did not go home. He did not dance with the one that brung him. It's Barry Switzer and Daryl Roy used to say. This young lady, she came stag. She started at the beginning and went through. She wasn't predisposed to anything. And anyway, it was the same thing but different, which is what all Star Trek is. Yeah. I don't know. Has it occurred to anybody else that we're coming up on 5 years of our Discovery countdown? 5 years when all these moments at cons, we were getting bits and pieces of looks. Anytime now, we're going to come up on the 5-year anniversary of the famous leaked Instagram of the extra Klingon who showed the world what the Klingons were going to look like and ignited that debate. So, right. I think everybody in my rooms this weekend got the idea of species diversity and how we smooth things over and what we're going to do with the original series episodes. Maybe they're going to have to finally just be fondly thought of as the public consumption model. We've talked about that before. Don't let me shock you with that one. As much as I'm sentimentally wishing they had tackled that issue of same lines, different shooting, not going to happen. In a Mirror Darkly did not prove anything, apparently, to some people. But yeah, have you reflected on how much things have changed? I'm glad we're not wasting our time and breath and energy on these side issues that aren't going to matter in the long run. I try to keep my focus, what's going to matter in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years? Because part of that equation, we don't know. The world is going to swing. External factors, wars, famine, pandemics are all going to come along that we can't foresee and blind us to the way we experience things and make us reevaluate what we saw before. Can you say 9/11 and DS9? Yeah. So who knows? But wow, it really felt like a marker a marker to me. And I was so proud. I was so proud to watch my babies. A little too paternal there, Larry. My babies talking in such a great way. And when I was on the panel, having such a diversity of opinions, that people coming from still being TNG fans or DS9 fans and loving Prodigy, or loving Discovery, and loving early Discovery better than later Discovery. Who knew? But Idic. And we are all one big happy fleet. So yes, lots of news coming down. We can get into that in the chat in a minute. But first, let me say, if you are leaving us right now, I really appreciate you being here with us. We'll get to all the chat first. And somebody else I really appreciate is all of our Patreons from my very simple Patreon group, our TTLers there. Diana Hopkins, Robin Wilson, Lawrence Todd, Anne-Marie Siegel, Keith Rombach, Justin Porteous, Nathaniel Robinson, and Blaze K. Thank you all so much, and especially our live wires, Rusty Harrell, Halberd Gunn Johnson, Jalen Bullock, Robert McLean, Alan Hoansey, J.R. Poole, Byron Bailey, Dave Gregory, and Casey Shafsky. Really appreciate everybody. I have a very simple Patreon. It's just a $5 and $10 a month, nothing complicated. You can check it out at patreon.com/Trekland Live. We're coming up to the end of the month. If you'd like to put in a little bit and help us out as we spread the streaming empire of Trekland across all these Trekland channels, you can help us out too. It's a shout out, and it's also access to some of our older interviews, the first couple of years of interviews from Portal 47, which is now getting into our 6 years. We're into 6 years of Portal, which is amazing. Hey, also, I'd love it if you would check out the Trek Files. It's at podcast.roddenberry.com, or just go to Facebook. Facebook is where our documents of the week. We have homework. Just kidding. It's fun homework. It's the documents we talk about with the progress. This week, the great, the one, the only David Livingston is back with us. We're talking about how directors are chosen and how they're lined up and budgeted. And we're looking at 1960s docs, and then David updates us. It's a real fun discussion. It's only 15, 20 minutes a week. So join us on the Trek Files if you can. That'd be great. And yes, back Saturdays, Life Support Live. Dr. Trek and Dr. Ali. One of us is a real doctor. We are boldly going through uncertain times. A lot of Star Trek, a little bit of daily living tips. It's a lot of fun. 10 a.m. Saturdays, 1 p.m., 10 a.m. Pacific Saturday, 1 p.m. Eastern. 6 UK time. Central Europe is at 7, and it's right here on these same Trekland channels. So give us a look if you can. I can't wait to see what the chat's going to say, if I've stirred up anything. If there's been any, God, we might have another week where there's news breaking. Star Trek news. There's enough news out in the world that's stressful enough. So I'm not sticking my head I'm not down the ostrich hole here, but I'm just saying the Star Trek news has been reassuring and hopeful too. So let's see what's happening. Okay. That's it. All you YouTubers, if you're watching me on YouTube only after the fact, you really should check us out live on Tuesday. It's a great community, and it's the immediacy. Until next Tuesday, then, please, stay healthy. Would you? Do all the things, even now. Just use your 7th grade science, okay? Would you promise me that? Stay woke. Check your sources, and be open to news that you had not heard about once you have checked your sources. That includes make sure you're talking to a real human being if you feel so aroused. And Trek well, everybody. Page 2. All righty. Let's look over at the parrots. There is so much Star Trek coming and going. The parrot analytics are these ratings from a company. No big deal to me. They're just handy to look at. I think we're gradually having other companies take a shot at this whole market, which is how do you let people know what's popular and not popular on TV, on all the channels, when there aren't so many commercials with ad rates to be set. And that's where we for years got our Nielsen's and others. That's a moot point, right? With digital originals, especially when all the studios of said original digital shows are keeping the numbers proprietary and not sharing. So this mnemonic just scours the internet. They've been doing it for nearly 10 years now, with their average demand expression, which is a fancy way of saying, look at all the mentions online, whether it's fans, whether it's critics, whether it's studio promotion. And then if you've got terrestrial numbers, throw those in too. And this week, the digital onlys were led by The Mandalorian, 46.7%, which is funny because it's not back. Boba Fett, 43.3, right behind it. This is times the average show's popularity. And in the spectrum, as the way Parrott mentions it, the average is the middle 3/4. Their exceptional is the upper 4/10 of all shows. Their outstanding is the upper 2.5%. And then good is down to like 76%. And then average is anywhere from 24 to 76. So when you hear that, that's the new baseline they use. Then it's Stranger Things and Peacemaker, which are all climbing. Clone Wars, The Witcher, Cobra Kai, Titans on an upswing, Pam and Tommy, and Ozark. That's the top 10 in the US for the past week of Sunday to Saturday. And number 10 there was 26.6 times more popular than the average show, just so you know. Overall, it's SpongeBob at number 1, Attack on Titan number 2, South Park number 3, Euphoria, SNL, Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, The Simpsons climbing, Game of Thrones, and Walking Dead. Kind of your typical whatevers. 2 of the digitals there on the top 10, and Walking Dead overalls, number 10 is 41.3. So where does that leave our Treks? Since we've been checking these on the side. So 26.6 was number 10. Looking at Discovery, which you would expect to be on an upswing here closing out the season, Discovery is hanging in. It's still in the, these are all the Treks are in their outstanding upper 2.5%. Just so you know, we micro focus on the top 10 or not. And it's a nice boundary, but the 30-day trend on Discovery, not the week to week, but the 30-day trend for all these shows, these Treks I'm going to tell you, the 30-day trend is sitting at 18.4 times more popular than the average show. The last 30 days, the demand is down about 18% on a rolling 30-day. The 60-day trend line was up sharply, and then it's still up barely, and it's still happier than 99.4% of all shows. Picard's just around the corner. It's sitting at 15.8, so just below where Discovery is now on its rolling 30 days. It's kind of in a flat. The change in demand over 30 days has been up 24%. The 60-day line is kind of flat. It's going to take more than that, but it's on an upswing. Prodigy, which isn't even actively out right now, but the buzz, their mnemonic for Prodigy on a 30-day trend is still a tad higher than Picard, 17.5 times more popular than the average. Their demand for Prodigy is up 23.2% on that 30-day trend line. Now, the 60-day trend line has dropped a lot. So that may be where the fact that there's no shows is. I know the math is wacky at times because you're talking about rolling averages and how do day to day and week to week, all of that. But just bear in mind that it is still not gone anywhere. All right, let's see. Soapbox. The parrots. What's next? Oh, yes, the chat. So as archaic if it may sound to you all, we're going to back scroll and see what's going on. I may think of some more news as it comes to me, but we'll see. I don't know. Did I stir anything up there? Do you realize that we're into 5 years since the spring of the coming of Discovery, and all the trailers and all the wheels seem to come off the happy dappy Star Trek fandom wagon with the acidity of the socials? Kind of took us all by, a lot of us took us by surprise, but here we are still standing. What did we learn on the show today, this last 5 years? So if I've got real questions, I will call out real questions. Other than that, we'll probably just descend into some of the same old conversations. Yes, Christoph, I was a couple minutes slow. I was really trying to get on at 22 after the hour, but I missed it by a couple minutes. But yes, happy 22/2/22 for everybody keeping up with those. Yep, yes, I am on Chrome, like it or not. I'm here. Uh-oh. Hopefully it's been good for everybody. Jared, you're coming to us from work. Thank you. Good to see you, man. You know what? What? You can't believe nobody recognized Dr. Trek at WhoCon. We have lots of Trek fans, lots of people overlap. The LA away team booth was there going full blast. Lambda Quadrant had a booth. Chase and Pop Culture Hero Coalition had a booth there. If you see my Instagram reels, please follow me on Instagram. I had a conversation with Sandra Pillar, who was sitting at Chase's booth for a while with some of her music. She didn't have her own booth, and she didn't lug all of Michael's books in this time, but you can get her book on, as we said. You can get it on. You can find Fade In, how movie scripts are written in Hollywood, especially franchise ones. Jared, I know I am really bummed that Southwest took out you and other people I heard from. Yes, absolutely. Now, wait a minute. We've got David Gregory on YouTube, and we got Dave Gregory on Facebook. Okay. Well, I should expect no less from a from a TTLer. So thank you. Christoph's going to wise me up here. Who fandom had its bad moments too, especially with the changed writing of writing, right? Or the Doctor being a woman. Yes. Every change in those. But change is baked into the cake of Doctor Who. So they can totally, even though, as my friend, and I was quoting some of his opinions there, as my friend James Kerwin was pointing out, when they did their equivalent of Trials and Tribs or Relics or whatever, when they did Modern Doctor C's original, the Harkness first Doctor, they did a dumbed down 1963 looking TARDIS console. They went for it. Of course, it may have been, that still may be a joy for them the way Tribulations was in 96, and not, when it's a one-off, it's okay. It's building sets to shoot in day after day. I still love the bus station bridges that we have now. I've been told that's so they can get crane shots in through the ceiling. Okay. I still wish it didn't take you 4 days. It was bad enough when Scotty in the Kelvin runs from one end of the ship. It felt like everybody runs in the Kelvin movies. They kind of do on modern. Nobody ever uses comm badges or communicators or wall units. Everybody runs everywhere to deliver messages like it's King Arthur days or something. But I'll never forget when he ran halfway across the ship. Yeah. That had a point, but it's not going there. Lockdown Who was great. Worldwide watch-alongs during the first year of pandemic, often with right. The revolution that was all this. That's going to be a silver lining that stays with us in some way, as I said 2 years ago, right? Let's see. This is interesting, Glenn. We didn't really talk about music, but this is a good point. Prodigy might have the best Star Trek series opening theme in years, if not ever. I still say I can hear about 3 different themes in it, including a World War II romantic ballad at the break strain. But it's all good. It is a great thing. Lower Decks music isn't bad. Dum 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 dum. Lower Decks music sounds like Galaxy Quest or the Orville's attempt to emulate a Star Trek, which, if you think about it, is high praise, because that's what Lower Decks is doing. Lower Decks is trying to be, I don't want to say a parody, a loving mockery, but still be Star Trek. and canon and pathos and heart, which was something we talked about over the weekend, about how people realized. I had a couple of people who had not watched Lower Decks, or they watched the first one and it freaked them out, which I totally get, as it did me a little bit. I wasn't about to stop, but I knew other people who did stop. I knew people that didn't get past Mariner's first scene with Boimler. I didn't realize until I'd seen it twice that she was drunk. That was not her normal character. Like, how is she going to function? I don't care what kind of a comedy you got. Why dress it up as Starfleet if she's going to be that dysfunctional? And she was drunk, and she was more than capable of pushing the comedic edges of it. But there's still enough pathos in that show and character building. And I took a poll in the room. Here's a moment. I took a poll in my solo room, and I said, how many of you have seen Lower Decks all the way through? And it was about half and half. It was a third to a half. Had, meaning a third to a half, had not. And I said, okay, everybody, here's the thing. There is enough cohesive pathos in Lower Decks. I can say one line to these people, and everybody will go, "Aw." Not yuck, 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 but aw. And everybody looked at me, and I said, "It's the Titan." And everybody went, "Yeah." It was really funny because and it was intermixed, and the people who hadn't watched it were like, And I said, "Yes, that Titan." But it was like, here's one defining moment, that everybody remembers. It was fun, funny. Everybody surviving their storms. Good. What are you saying? Whoops, why can't I get back down? Yes, Jared, you're big, and you have put in your time in Who fandom. I know. Over a decade ago, when Doctor Who fandom was raising money for charity and threatening to burn down the house of the creatives for the same reason. Okay, then maybe I've got rose-colored glasses here. So I was overall. But if they had threatening to burn down the houses, really, metaphorically, because the last 4 and 5 years ago, I literally thought somebody might be trying to do that, inspired by our political leaders. Let's see. Okay, well, I'm getting all the headlines from Europe. Oh. Well, Rusty, how can I turn that down? Okay. Good deal. Well, I'm just glad we're all still standing, Rusty. I look forward to it. And thank you. And thank you, as with everything else, for being a live wire in the Patreons. I look forward to it. Make sure and catch me, because things are starting to heat up. Actually, I actually have to start thinking about calendar and schedules again, which is amazing. But we'll work it. We'll get it. Okay. There you go, John X. Excuse me, everybody. Yes, this. Now, I love how the variables changes there from subscriber accounts to potential viewers. So every household has 2.3 potential viewers. Even at that, though, that's obviously a big multiplier effect. Everybody. Hey, Steven, how's Austin? Oh, you don't even want to go there, Captain. You don't even want to go there. Melanie's saying, took you a while to warm up to Discovery. Did not like the drastic change in the Klingons. Exactly. Well, it took 28 years. You talk about the main explanation finally in Enterprise for four heads. That's very true. I remember somebody on the panel this week was talking about how she just did not like bald Klingons, and she was glad to have the hair back. And yeah, we talked about the retconning of different houses were different planets, not just different families. And now I want to know what happened to all the bald and all the skeletal, all the alien-ish as in Aliens, the movie franchise, how the alien-ish looking, huge, extended, bulbous skull Klingons, what happened to them? After they wiped out the Tribbles, did they turn and wipe out some of the lesser houses that had caused the trouble? Interesting. Oh, Christoph, I'm really sorry if the video is freezing on and off, but okay. Don't think we'll have a problem with it there. Kelvin movies are crap. No, yeah. Oh, the other thing that's funny, but they're enjoyable. Yeah, they're enjoyable. When I say crap, I don't mean crap. I mean like waste of time. They don't add anything to the greater good. Except the prime sliver at the beginning we have to account for. The whole thing about Romulan, whatever the final accounting of the reason and scope is, because it's gone from the movie unmentioned to the Countdown comic explained, and now the Picard retcon of exactly what the Romulan supernova was, what the extent was, all of that. Aside from things like that, they're kind of disposable. The other thing was we talked about the shows coming, everything was small. Somewhere along the way, I remembered to throw in a headline about Arabic 4 is coming in the movie franchise, and it's going to be Kelvin again, right? Which we're all up with the news. And they're still clinging to that December 2023 date, although now it may get pushed. But it was an afterthought. And I looked at my 25 otherwise engaged fans and said, okay, who is breathlessly waiting on this? And nobody said yay or nay. It was like, it's there. Which to me, I should do a whole topic on this. Do you know the fate of the Kelvin cast? I mean, there would be another Star Trek movie of something. But between the pandemic, making us all look at everything with new eyes, and just the whole remarriage, returf merging of CBS, Paramount, and Viacom, or CBS and Viacom, whoever the parties were, now that they're all stitched back together, what that would look like for who's doing what and who's making decisions about what. They actually went to focus group to see if focus groups wanted to keep the Kelvin cast. And I think the needle was like toward the yes. It made it sound so ambivalent. They're like, okay, well, I guess, okay. Better the devil you know than the devil you don't know, I guess. Which is sad. I wanted them to innovate and do anthology movies, which I knew wasn't going to happen. The same way I knew we'd never have a Founding of the Federation series in 1992. It was never going to happen. But things change. Things do change. Anyway, but the attitude of the room I had, again, there was somebody there younger than 40. My young lady, my favorite young fan of the day. So you kind of expect that, but still, there was just a big decided yawn either way about, movies? Are they still doing movies? Okay, fine. The series are taking up all the oxygen in the room, and that's fine. Thank God they are. Thank God that these movies, the melodrama of the Trek movies, will they, won't they, isn't what the outside world has to think about when it thinks of what Star Trek is today. What changed? How about 27 or 26 to 10? Yeah, that's a change. But then you got 5 or 6 or 7 series giving you 10 apiece, not 1 or 2 giving you 20. But I know. What will Trek be like in 40 years? Only 1 year before Vulcan. Boy, I'll see your eugenics wars and raise you a million. I will. I might be around then to be disappointed, unless we just sweep it under the rug as being secret. How many people in 2060, 61, 63? Because it was originally going to be, I'm always confused because it was originally going to be 2061 and then Rick changed it to 2063. I'm always going to be amazed to see how many people actually go to Bozeman and camp out on April 4th and April 5th, 2063. I'd love to see that. Kind of like the cult, out waiting for the end of the world. Oh, I hope it doesn't go that way. Well, Captain, you never understood the hatred for any Trek, the whole this is not Trek, just give it time, it'll take shape. I know. But I think I've told this story. I saw this crystallized very nicely, but I totally got it. When something is such a big part of your life, for some people, and you can say whether that's healthy or not, or balanced or not. This is a topic for Dr. Ali and I on Saturdays. But when so much of your well-being and your equilibrium and your happiness, and not just happiness, maybe your stability depends on everything you get from Star Trek, any one thing. But when you too much of anything, Lieutenant, even love is not necessarily a good thing. And when it's so wrapped up in Trek and something new comes along, even with that label, you are, as the 1,000-year-old man Brooks and Reiner would say, it's fear. It's fear is your motivation. You are afraid that the thing that's meant so much to you is going to go away, even after you've had more than one brick in the wall, even more than one food in the buffet. And I'll just never forget the Klingon fan who was asking Mary and Ken at before the debut of the show, and all people had were the pictures and the talk and the scary stuff about what had been released, and said, please don't change the thing that I've loved almost all my life. And it wasn't screamy, threatening. It was very plaintive. He's standing there in his Klingon outfit and was just being so, I don't say emotional, but emotive. Please don't take away the thing that has made me so happy in my life and given me such good times. And they were really touched. And they're like, whatever we do, we will not do that. And sometimes the swells of the new wave take a while to die down. Yes. And even the makers realize they'd gone too far. I think a lot of makers realized it was a bridge too far, but that was Brian's idea. And Brian wasn't even around to be yelled at or change his mind. They were just stuck with it. And you saw immediately by the time budgets came around and you had to get through, you could only make so many changes midstream. And you had to wait for the new budget year to come around, the new season of funding. And you saw what happened with now explaining it is another thing, but you saw how a lot was softened when it came to those Klingon heads. They weren't quite as, what do you call that? Externally skulled, posterior skull. I don't know. They weren't so fringy butt skulled. But I get it, and I understand that. And the more times I can find the things that unite us, not divide us, it's not just about cohesiveness. It's about reassuring people that don't want the thing they've loved ripped up and taken away from them, which is what sometimes the new wave of creatives don't understand. They may intellectually get it, but they don't get it until they've lived through it and maybe even worked with it and seen why things are that way. But then that's the human process. That's what happens when you let something when you let that car sit in the garage for 12 years and go out and try to restart it, you're going to have issues and problems than if you kept it running all along. That's a really bad but accurate metaphor. Oh, John X, you thought the Klingons had got very stale by 2005. They sell the same 70s disco outfits and platform shoes. Making them look more alien was a great accomplishment for Discovery. Yeah, but like touchscreens and smart holoviewers, how are you going to explain it? For me, it was way easier to explain the Klingons, as emotionally upset as people were, than it was for the other. My cancer theory was obviously not taken, but it was funny to watch them retcon the holo viewers. Yeah. Unfortunately, touchscreens were here to stay. I guess what we saw on, if we don't make all of original series the pretend network adaptations for public consumption, the dime novel equivalent, the pulps of actual reality, then I guess the elevated touch buttons without 3D action, without retcon Delta Flyer type action or Captain Proton action, contact switches and push buttons, they still touch lights. Although, except for the rocker switches. The rocker switchers are still great to have. You've adapted this to Discovery, Glenn. The even-numbered seasons don't suck. Okay. I still kind of the whole Red Angel suit thing still. They have these great enigmatic startups, like the 5 stars, the 5 red bursts, that wind up with the goofy anime suit, the superhero suit, or the burn is about the tantrum throwing alien at the wrong time at the wrong place. So I'm really, really hoping that the ADM or the DMA. Oh, thank you for sharing this, Christoph. I'd be happy to share the boost there. Boost to share. Noah has a Kickstarter for a short film on type 1 diabetes. Very good. Very good. You liked the 3rd season too of Discovery? It was just all over the place. Yes, it was. Into the 32nd century. Putting hair on some of them did pacify some of the outliers, though. Well, it just makes you wonder where they came from. If they didn't exist 200 years ago, did the hair people, was that an aspect of the augment virus coming back? But then they were hairy in Archer's time and in control. They were ruling Kronos 100 years before Discovery. See. But I'm willing to see something's going to happen to L'Rell. What happens to L'Rell between when we last saw her and the coming of Kor and Kang and Koloth's time? The virus is running rampant, but this whole thing about no women on the council, it's only 30 years later that you hear that in Star Trek 6. So, and Aubrey, it's like when the wives of governors, when the governor die, the Southern governors especially die, and their wife fills out their term. Oh, Anne Marie, that's awful nice of you to say. Aha, Zahir. There's a whole backstory for this, and I've answered this in my column in the magazine. But basically, the Phoenix was a test ship that broke the warp barrier, the same way that the Wright brothers got a plane to fly, or Lindbergh flew the ocean, but without all kinds of higher tech gear that made faster, farther possible. Does that make sense? The first wave of cars would drive, but you couldn't drive them cross country. And you had to recharge the battery, or you had to hand crank the stuff. Basically, it's like dilithium was an advancement that let you do more, which also means that there was a thing in 70s fandom where dilithium was discovered on the 5th moon of Jupiter. Whether that's in size or in orbit, I don't know, because we kept discovering more Jupiter moons. But the original thing was dilithium was not native to Earth, and that's why we didn't have it to play with in the original years. But that it was discovered later, and that the discovery of dilithium did not allow the first warp flight. The matter-antimatter energy generation was raw, and dilithium just helps condense and make the matter-antimatter output plasma radiation just more manageable and pure, and you can do more with it. That's what dilithium does. The matrix, the lattice work of dilithium, special matrix. So you didn't have to have dilithium to go warp 1 to break the warp barrier, but it helps you get on further up the scale. So you can have the one before you had the other. That's it. Don't suck. It's still pretty bad compared to Prodigy. Lower decks. I'm losing track on the flow there. But yes, happy Tuesday to you, Tuesday here. I should have made more out of that. Guys, I've had my head into about a million things. Yes. But hey, at least I know now it's Boba Fett. The first 20 years, nobody talked about this out loud. He was a cult thing to the cultists before it was a popular thing. And I said Boba Fett for ages, which is silly because Baba would have been 2 B's. But what did we know? Everybody I knew said Boba Fett back then. That's kind of it, Melanie. The more it's talked about, that's kind of what they do on a sophisticated level. but there's nothing like raw numbers pushing it. Speaking of the Kelvin movies, the end of the 2023 movie shall be Kelvin and include the whole surviving main cast. Pretty optimistic timing, as we discussed on P47. The end of the 2023 movie should be Kelvin. Yeah, so you mean minus Anton. John says Discovery Season 1 with a weak finale. Well, I thought the beginning was weak. The top 3 first season in Trek history. Got a Hugo Peabody nom and a Saturn Award out of it. Yeah, but it was the first Star Trek in 12 episodic Star Trek in 12 years. So I think people were disposed. There was a lot of money thrown up there and a lot of bang. I don't mean CGI bang. I mean, there was a lot of splash and a lot of effort and all that. I just don't think it was. I think it got rewarded for being there and being the first of a long time. Kind of the opposite of Next Generation, which finally got an Emmy nomination as a series, 7th season, when the 7th season was not as good as the 5th and 6th. 7th was kind of the weakest of the big years, but I'd agree. But that's cool. That's cool. I thought Discovery Season 1 was all over the place. Going to the mirror felt just like, what can we do? Hey, let's go to the mirror universe. Let's have a Klingon war. Let's go down the list of stuff and do it. But that'll be that. Some of this is going to be time to settle. And what are you saying? Yes. Oh, they do, John. I had not got into this. They count illegal downloads. That's good. That's a measure of popularity. They're not the Rip Torrent police. Yeah, Captain. But is that really what you want of your first Star Trek back in a dismal world looking for inspiration? I don't know. That might have resonated as a parallel, but it's just, yeah. This is what I think, John. The naysayers are down to a low hum now. SNL is going to blow the lid off the numbers too. That was the other thing we talked about this weekend, John and everybody. Is the bar so high, the expectation so high? I said, is, to use the old parlance, is Strange New Worlds the great white hope of Star Trek old school fandom? Like, is it an impossibly high bar to be all things to all people who don't quite feel like they're finding a place? But it's really, I still go back to that young lady who was, I'm going to say 25, maybe somewhere between, she was post-college, 22 to 28, who said she'd actually binged the entire back catalog of Star Trek from day one in order, in meticulous order, and decided that, yeah, Discovery kind of, well, she said almost ruined things. Or she said Discovery, how did she put it? Discovery ruined canon, which it didn't. It's still there. It's just going to take a while to settle and have its rough edges wound off. And we know that because we can see what was done to Discovery going forward and what the ripples were in the other series as they were developed. Well, Zahir, I know part of this is not you so much as new people coming in by Discovery, knowing where to go hang out. I finally just bluntly said that. I said, well, yes, of course, this crowd is going to skew original series and next gen because you got to be old enough to be able to attend a con, have the money, disposable income, and have the wherewithal, unless you're born in. And that's why I always like to perk up when I see 10, 12, 14-year-olds. Usually they're sitting with a parent or an uncle or something or an aunt. But when they're alone, as we had a couple of times this weekend, I gravitate right to this without looking creepy. It's how the work of one actor playing a smallish part can spawn a whole new Trek series. Can't wait for SNW. Yeah. Except that we don't think about Pike being a smallish part, although in the totality of things it was, but it's a lead captain and of an Enterprise. So it was always bigger than that. And Jeff Hunter always had a bigger outsize. And Sean Kenny getting to ride wheelchair Pike all these years. And good on him. Good on him. Hi, Diana. Double the pleasure. There you go. Wow. Jared, who is the person from the production team of the Kurtzman era that I would like to see give a Trekland style behind the scenes presentation on the current era? Well, a lot of the creatives are only, like Dave Blass is only working on Picard. Some of the folks only work on one, but there are the overarching, very few people. I've got to get in and wade into this. And it's changing. The model of the, not Star Trek, but the model of these is people launch series and then move off to launch something else. Like Robert Butler in the 60s and 70s talked about being a pilot director and how his interest was in launching something and not really coming back to a series. He did sometimes. But, he did the pilot for Batman. He did the pilot for Star Trek. He did the pilots for a lot of series that were iconic even. But the pilots for series and then moved on and never went back and shot another one. Now, that's directors, and in television, directors tend to be the guest. Even when there's a regular director, they at most might do, well, in an old season, they might do 3 or 4. Nowadays, they might do 2 out of the 10 or 12. So I need to think about this. And see who's truly hands-on. Because a lot of people with a title are hands-on, and a lot of people with a certain leadership title hire the people below them, and the people below them are the ones who are really supplying the nitty-gritty detail that rounds out that kind of a presentation. So that's part of how knowing, like, the Berman era people for 20, 30 years is different than it's not just a matter of getting to know them and meeting them. It's like seeing a vibe. And then the animated series not only are animated, but they're different from each other in how they're put together, which is we're getting into now. Fascinating process. And the 2D art, even though it's digitally drawn, of Lower Decks versus the 3D CGI of Prodigy, that style. And that even drives how the shows are done or are assembled. So that's a thing that has been interesting to outside the hardcore animation industry, a thing to dissemble and illuminate everybody on. Oh, well, thank you, John, and Stellar Cartography thanks you. That company, about every 6 or 8 months, they come out with a new best of list, and they keep having me on it, which is nice, I guess, because there's all kinds of map things. Real and fictional maps are honored by them. And it looks very splashy, and I think it's a little industrially within the industry self-serving, kind of like those Who's Who books that they make their money by having you buy the book. You get the award or the honor, but then they want you to buy the $100 book. But that's not the way these folks are. You have a little ribbon you can put when you talk about your book. You can do that. But yes, I'm already at the chat. I had kind of a soft subject this year, Cairo. This week. But I wanted to stop, and it's not a hard anniversary, but it really, by matter of it being Gallifrey in February, and the last, it was kind of like a marker. It was kind of like an obvious mental marker, and it made me realize before the pandemic, even though that we had a couple of years after the Discovery premiere, we had a couple of years to still bash this around, but just made me think about what's changed with and without the pandemic. Yeah, sorry, so close, Christoph. I'm sorry. Yeah, Ted. If Ted has gotten over his bitterness about leaving, which I think he has, he's had lots of success. It's not like nobody would hire him after this. He's was on Riverdale, might still be, but he was on Riverdale for ages. Hey, Scott. I don't know. See, I don't have heroes and I don't have H&I. I see what they do marketing wise when their bits turn up on, I see the money they've invested on doing some clever stuff with the way they do with all the shows they carry. So good on them. So I didn't know this saga. They moved TOS to 1 a.m. and then moved it back to 8. Was that, are you saying they had like cards and letters? They had a lot of angry feedback? Thank you, Resident Who fan of the day, Jared. The console used in the 12-1 Doctor crossover episode, 12-1, was the same one that was built for. Okay, so the show did not have to build it from scratch. That's a lot like Relics on TNG using the fans' console and captain's chair. It was already built. All they had to do was build one pie wedge because it was such a radical thing to do way back in season 5 of Next Generation. Things were still baby talk. There wasn't even a DS9 happening yet. That's how early days that was. Hi, Linda. Yeah. Well, I've been doing home office since the mid-90s, but then that's kind of the nature of the beast. Justin, do I think by the time S&W does its red carpet debut, it will be live instead of virtual, or is it too soon to hope for? Well, what do we got? We got 2 months. I would think that by 2 months, 3 months, I would hope that by 2.5 months that we would know what's happening with Omicron. And I mean, there's this other variant now of Omicron, the 2B, what is it? 2BA, 2B5, something, 2AB, whatever. There's a spin-off variant of Omicron they're keeping an eye on. And whether it will be hyper contagious or whether it'll be hyper dangerous, and hopefully not both. But right now, everybody's hoping. We've been here before 2 or 3 times, and now exhaustion, even among people of good faith and science following, you just can't help but be humanly exhausted with this. I'm going to say, I hope it is. Let's all hope it is for all of our sakes. Let's all hope that by early May that we can have open air events like that again. But that's my guess. My guess and hope is that, yes, we will be live, but we'll see. We will see. That's a lot of mixing when you think about what happens at a red carpet. You have all the actors and all the press in a rope line with cameras and a lot of, hangers on. And then you have maybe fan audience watching, and maybe you have a premiere screening the way they did for Discovery and Picard. What kills me is we're coming up on the 2-year anniversary of Picard's red carpet event here in LA and launching with a live event. And within 3 weeks, we had a party. We had the live event premiere. And then a few days later, when the actual airdrop happened, we had a live meetup here in Burbank at a big pub. And there were the local fandom groups and all were in there. And we all kind of co-sponsored it. And there were, 60, 80, 100 people in the back room area and all along the place. And it was a fun time. And within 2 weeks, it's all gone, right? Talk about a whipsaw. You do love the Prodigy theme and the Lower Decks. I think so too, Linda. I think so too. John X, you don't think so? Well, we'll see. We'll see. We'll see. What are you saying here, Scott? Oh, they about the H&I switch. They found out that only hardcore nerds stay up late. Oh, well, that's the thing. I'll look that up and see what happened. Yeah, Christoph, part of that was the 60s. If it was on videotape, it was thought to be disposable, and videotape was so expensive, nobody had any idea about archiving. So a lot of American TV a lot of not primetime game shows, talk shows, news programs from the day, even network, were gone. Kids shows. There's almost no tapes of, Captain Kangaroo. There's almost no tapes of daytime game shows here, classic things. There's 2 and 3, unless somebody had a lot of foresight. Not until the late 60s, but all through the 50s and 60s. The soap operas. Yeah. Let's see. They were literally threatening to burn down houses over the death of Ianto Jones. Okay, Jared, you got me there. Not being a modern follower. Calendar, schedule, in-person events. What's that? I know. I've been reading the books of the old ones. Okay. Well, okay, whatever. But we have the Janeway statue, and we have the Spock bust in Vulcan, and we have the Kirk memorials in Riverside, Iowa. So I'm waiting for the McCoy statue in Atlanta somewhere. Uh-oh. And this just in on the side channel. Yeah, well, I Love Lucy was filmed. That's why it was so remarkable. Fred and Ethel. Yeah, Desi and Lucy filmed the shows so they would have rerunnable shows, and they filmed them even in front of a live audience. And that's why they weren't even they weren't even, like, a lot of shows tried to telecine off of but they were the network shows. My point is, the value of the daytime was just seen as entirely disposable. Yes. Yes. And she had the copies sent to the West Coast. Right, exactly. Okay. Hey, Ralph! Everybody, the great Ralph Miller is with us today. Ernie's Tacos. Ralph is begging and calling to us. When are we going to get back? Okay, we're all talking about live events, and actually, let's see. I'm looking for a question. Since before your sun burned hot in space, I'm looking for a question. Well, John, I'm not saying people are booing it. I'm just saying people are yawning. And if you actually poke someone to say, what do you think? People go, well, I'd rather see it than not see it. But I just don't. I think thankfully people don't see the movies as the driver of the franchise right now, especially when they're kind of, unless something radically changes, and that could happen. But it's been 12 years now. The Kelvins are going to be like the stub of the Star Trek tree. Everything else flows together. Even Mirror and whatever. Even the other alternate universes. It's an alternate universe, but there'll still be more hours of Mirror, good or bad, like it or not. There'll still be more hours of Mirror universe than there will be of Kelvin universe. So, whatever. That's cool. Well, I think the movies get people who aren't week-to-week TV watchers. They're movie and they're sci-fi people, and they're kind of quasi-excited for it. Because that's the world. I always laugh when I see things comparing Star Wars to the Star Wars movies to the Star Trek movies. I go, let's compare the Star Trek series to the Star Wars series then. It's like, that's not what one is the spin-off, and they're not, or anything. James Bond exists as a movie franchise over its iteration. I just always love it when anybody talks about the Star Trek movies like it's this thing. They were just rewards for a job well done until the Kelvins, and now they're the movies that don't go anywhere. DS9 went a lot more places than the Kelvin movies do. And I don't mean logistically, and I don't mean even thematically. Anyway. Yeah, lots of casual, it's a causal, but yeah, lots of causal fan. Oh, Cairo, you are doing it up big. You're coming to Chicago and you're coming to Vegas. Well then, LA Vegas, you need to do a trek. You need to do a Trekland trek. Use your Portal 47 discount. You'll be pushing 90 in 2063, Tobias. Get you a pike chair to go. Yes, but you have to be inside like it's a little steam room. It's your own personal little steam room inside. Only your neck is out. There we go, Jared. The Life Support Live Retreat, Bozeman, Arizona, April 3rd, 2063. We're all going to camp out in the woods around the non-existent Titan II, the 100-year-old Titan II silo. Yeah. Hello. Comedy Forecast. Are you new with us today? Coming over from YouTube? Thank you, and thanks for the comment. Okay, you'll have to reveal something there. Or not. Wait, say what? Okay. Oh, back to Jared. Okay. Well, there's the Titan missile silo in Arizona is what they used for that. But in real life, it was obviously just outside Bozeman, which was not Bozeman in the movie, everybody. That was retconned on Voyager later. That Zephyrin Cochrane's meeting with the Vulcans and the landing and all that was at Bozeman, because Bozeman is one of Brannon's hometowns. So he wrote it in to the episode. But at the time, it was Resurrection City, which was a nondescript place. I think Montana was kind of in there, and I think he may have been hesitant to pin it down to Bozeman in the day. Or if that was not exactly Bozeman, downtown Bozeman, that was out in the boonies, so why would it be Bozeman, even small city Bozeman? There you go, Stephen. If you are still standing at 80 after climate change, chemical pollution, World War III, and who knows what else, you're not only going to be there in Bozeman in 63, but also celebrate the Trek Centennial in 2066, which would be 3 years later. Took me a laugh. I don't know. If there's all these disappointed people in 2063, will they all swear off Star Trek by 2066? That will be, talk about the fandom debacle moment. That will be something. Millions of Star Trek fans give up on their love and passion after Vulcans fail to show up. If only we were augments. No, if we were all augments, we'd all kill each other before we got there. Okay, everybody doing their math here. Get those damn Borg off my lawn. I know, Stephen. I know. It's like, I'll see there was no eugenics war in the 90s and raise you. We have touch screens everywhere now. I know. That's why as much as I hate it, that's why, I knew eventually when we come up with some kind of a hyperlight drive, it's probably won't be matter, antimatter, and for sure won't be run through a dilithium matrix lattice if dilithium remains an unnamed fictional element. I'm just clinging on as long as I can. And, the eugenics war is not happening was kind of the first bell, and we all kind of like made it go underground. Touchscreens may be the death of literal original series adventures, and we may have to go with that whole package for public consumption. Which, yes, someone's pointed out, Kirk, you could take an interpretation of Kirk's prologue in the motion picture novelization that Gene wrote already covering for the fact of how much different the show looked as a movie than the series, given a little bit of money. And suddenly 10, 15 years of cultural and movie making technology. You personally plan to have your... All right, Melanie. All right. All right. I want an android body. Yes. Thank you, Miss Uhura. Let's see. Okay. Okay, William. You're selling a bunch of stuff. We'll give you a plug. Everybody go check it out there. Let's see. Oh, Captain Calvin, I saw people thinking this and thought, oh, no, that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Hey, Steve. Wow. A few old Go Bears and some New Dawn hellos to you, Steve. Been a long time. What if William Shatner is actually a different character from the 21st century who spent his life on the holodeck pretending to be Kirk? Well, then I would say that would be a story. Hi. The mysterious Why Hello Elsie is back. But love you too. And there you go. Glenn, what are you? Yeah, you're Pacific or Mountain? I forget where you are, Glenn. 22222 on 222, and you got a screenshot of it. Well, I hope everybody did. Now, I feel like I'm in a space control booth here. And now coming up on Alaska and Hawaii, or we're running the New Year's Eve broadcast across the country. Right. Oh, can take this one further. The even-numbered Kurtzman shows, Lower Decks and Prodigy. So does that include Picard then? Is that what that is? Yeah, Melanie, this was like the big retcon, one of the big retcons. But if you were listening at that same Vegas before the debut, in August before the September debut, Mary and Ken were sharing some of the retconning that the makeup crew and them were already doing about how the bone-headed, the bald Klingons with those heavily textured skulls used the inlets and the textures in the crevices in their own skulls to hide sensors that made them better warriors in battle. There was all this cockamamie stuff about why the heads were shaped like they were or why they let them be that way. And they were actually augmenting them with technology for fighting and combat and sensor scanning and sleuthiness. And I was just like going, okay, why does this smell like it's already retconning the pushback to the look and not something that was a driving force in the beginning? Yeah, I think it's all part of why Brian got, for right or wrong, got cold feet between the pushback about the look of the ship and the squareness elves, and people catching on right off the bat that it was original art for Planet of the Titans, which was fine. But I think it just threw people. Like, yes, they're called fans for a reason. Don't you remember this from Voyager? And the Klingons wanting to be more alien than ever before, but how do we explain it? Those weren't concerns to him, and then he wasn't around long enough to deal with how they deal with it. Everybody else was. Let's see. Questions, everybody. So all those luxuriously long-haired Klingons we've seen so far have never been at war. Exactly. I thought that was a little... But of course, it could have changed. It could have changed from the 2300s when a lot of them were augment smooth to 100 years later. That could change. Your pendulum swings in culture, even in Klingon culture. Okay, in your fan fiction, you came up with the Star Trek Aladdin. Okay. Dilithium was here. It was just an unknown stone, and one of the stones was actually Princess Jasmine's diadem. Like, what were they for the Troyans and the Elasians? The Elasian tears? Not Elasian tears. Which, see, the whole retconned explanation of how dilithium works is that it's heavily stratified with a lattice formation. Thank you, first season, Next Generation. We got that clear. Bob, a fet. Yes, a female fet. Da 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 da. Yeah, this was pretty funny, Stingray. During the P Plus earnings call, which was public, they had the trailer to Strange New Worlds with no markers on it, unless you were like really in the fine print. And people that shared the trailer. I saw some of the stills. Somebody shared the stills and said, "Oh, look what's out." And then it was all gone. I couldn't get back and find that. But it's just funny. It's like, see, but this is, I think that was all the finance and legal end of Paramount Plus, not the production and promotion end. The lawyers and the suits still are not, their head is not in the space of, they're used to putting out boring stuff that no one cares about. And maybe some of it's proprietary, but they, that's the mindset. And the fact that someone would actually want to take it and use it, and they didn't have enough guarantees, they didn't have enough windows, bells, whistles, frames, hoopla, things to jump through. There weren't enough gates to keep, that it threw them. And of course, the first reaction is, get rid of that. And so the first reaction is, take that down. And they don't care about what damage it does or doesn't do. Now, some people kind of thought, well, this is going to be kind of hands off anyway. There's some disagreement about whether there were, do not share notices anywhere besides in tiny fine print. I don't know. But it's their proprietary stuff and they got the right to do it. And if somebody wanted to fight them on it, fine. I just think it came from a place, I think the left-handed promoter people were all cringing. Like, oh, great. Here's another, the right hand, left hand. That happens all the time because nothing is a monolith. Now that we've remerged and we not only have not a monolith, but we've got people in different monoliths. People in different not a monoliths are trying to figure out who's doing what and who's in and who's out. So there's all of that happening, and you have things. Every once in a while, you have things like this. It's just like the big shutdown of the websites in 96 or 98 when fans were clipping for the first time frame grabs and screen caps, and you were a bigger, your website was cooler the more you had. And then the Paramount Digital attorneys sent out cease and desist letters to the top 100 websites that had billions of frame caps. And everybody at PDE at StarTrek.com was going, no, don't do that. They'll hate us. They'll hate us. But they didn't care. And so that was kind of when the first 2 years of StarTrek.com's goodwill went out the window, and took many, many years for anyone to take it seriously after that, despite the best efforts of a lot of good people and a lot of my friends. They were always under the gun after that. And then the other things that lawyers would shackle them versus what the private websites could do, including announcing the cast of the Kelvin movies. Those were crazy years. Yeah, it will come back. It will be back unless they tweak on it. Yeah, I'll say, Jared, the last 2 or 3 episodes all had uplifting captain speeches. One of them from Saru, one of them from Burnham, maybe 2 from one of them. Running around on Kronos in the Orion. I mean, that was kind of cool. Having Clint Howard be a guest star, that made it feel like Star Trek. Wow, Rose, if the 26th of May 2020 was the first time I spoke to you on YouTube, or was it another time? I don't know, Rose. Sorry. I don't know any way. I mean, I guess could quantify that kind of, but things don't get preserved, especially back then. It was a little bit a Yahtzee on twos. So you're going to take it for your Yahtzee? Yes, take it for your Yahtzee and hope for bigger on the twos. Yeah, you're not losing much if you take it as a Yahtzee and not a twos. Well, exactly, except that if somebody actually thought there'd be no season 2, then that would be a disaster. That would have been a disaster for the corporation and the streaming arm and everything. They were not about to let a one-season Star Trek happen at all. Yes, Tuesday. Everything's being installed today. Exactly. Hey, hello, Elsie. Why, hello, Elsie? I'm still wondering who you are. Discovery's grown on you, minus giving Spock another secret sibling. It was strange the first time. I know. But see, what we've got to realize here is that Sarek is just one bizarre guy. He's married not one, but 2 human women after having a baby with a Vulcan princess. And he's got half kids and foster kids and you name it. You name it. Star Trek Parallel, new on UPN. Yeah, except that Parallels was an episode of Next Generation. That was Janet's favorite for a long time. It was her favorite episode to go to sleep to. Yeah. You think Prodigy and Lower Decks took some of the pressure off Strange New Worlds? Well, comedy forecast, whoever you may be. Yeah. I see what you're saying. Except that some, but still, as a live action 1 hour weekly, which throws back to original and next gen. We'll see. Yeah, Spock is secretive about his family, and Sarek kind of is too. But then, gang, the entire Vulcan culture is way secretive. There's nothing about Ponfar in the medical database. For 100 years of Federation co-membership and 200 years of contact with humans, and McCoy knows nothing about it, like he's a dumb fuck. The guy who saves the galaxy on the science end every other week knows nothing about Ponfar. Yeah. Now, what is this? The new Trek. This is post Kelvin, right? The new Trek. I hate that thing because I always think of a candy bar. Because New Trek is made of nougat, right? New Trek fans, and I remember New Trek as the thing that was abandoned for Next Generation. The New Trek, although we capitalized it then. New Trek fans skew younger on Twitter, but older on Facebook. Well, everything is younger on Twitter and older on Facebook, no matter what it is. But just the fact that there are New Trek fans on Facebook at all is interesting. So share your lists, John. Somebody look this up. I'm not sure because he didn't speak, especially in the 60s. He didn't speak a line, but maybe he was on camera enough so much. I want to say he was credited, but I'm 50-50 on that. My brain would say he wouldn't have been. My gut is saying that he was. So I'm trying to figure out where that comes to balance. You can't believe 2017 was 5 years ago. Yeah, we're coming up on the 5th anniversary of later this year. We'll have the 5th anniversary of Discoveries. Don't be so modest. What did I do? Oh no, what have I done now? About the, yeah. It is, but it's an industry thing. It's not some impartial body because they come up with a new way to say something every year or so. That's like the 3rd one of those that I've been done. But hey, I'll take it. I'll gladly. It's on the page. It's on my store page right now. By the way, if you ever want to get a copy of Stellar Cartography, please come to I'll take you back to Amazon, but please come to the link on my page so I get a nickel or something out of it. It would be nice. Just saying. Appreciate it. And when you come to my store page at LarryNemechuk.com, you can see the little ribbon thing from that cartography bunch. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, goes, guys. You look at 80s movies and say 20 years ago, no, they're going to be 40 years now. 40 years. Back to the Future. We're coming up on the 40th of the Wrath of Khan. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't know, Christoph. Is it the end of the cat? Yeah. Okay. It happens. It happens, John. Yeah, 90s music is old school. Yeah, define old, define school. Uh, let's see. I'm thinking it ought to be live. Yeah. Well, see, this is still, people are all emerging at different rates. Thank you, Cairo. This is what I was trying to get to. BA.2 seems to not make the original BA1 wave too much worse, but drags it out. Just dragging it out. Thank you, Krista. See, I knew my Austrians would be right there on top of it. Omicron B, you have a lot less distractions than we do over here. Omicron B2 seems to be even more contagious and a bit worse than the first Omicron, but not as bad as Delta and the original. Summer's UV light and some herd immunity should help over summer at least. Illinois is lifting their mask mandate 228. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, the Picard theme is pretty depressing. Discovery's theme is kind of sad as well. That's why you like the upbeat Lower Decks and Prodigy. And it'll be interesting to see what we have for Strange New. Well, Captain Calvin, yeah, the original series bloopers were really bloopers existed. The gag reel, they had been. You can now find, if you were a film collector, video collector at cons, by the time videotape came out and dealers could mass produce copies. So by the 80s and well into the 90s, the 80s and the 90s, you started to see people used to just, producers and film editors and Hollywood insiders, TV and film, and sometimes they were a little bit off color because people would curse and they didn't want people to ruin their reputations, because you'd see all your, when the PR gatekeepers kept nobody knew Rock Hudson was gay for 30 years, much less that some of these hallowed Hollywood icons cursed like a sailor, especially the women. So a lot of that stuff was kept on. The people in the industry shared bloopers and kept it under wraps for parties and things, and talking points. And then when video happened and the video revolution happened in the 80s and 90s, then they proliferated. So yes, before that, when Gene would take the gag reels to conventions and they were so iconic, the blooper reels, that was the first time the mass public, since Star Trek was pushing a mass public wave like no other ever seen before, that was the first time the public, especially kids, knew what blooper reels were and gag reels were. And they were the bloopers, and you'd see them at convention. And after a while, it was like the first time I ever saw the blooper reels was at the first con I went to, which was just a daytime nostalgia convention where there were no sci-fi guests. It was nostalgia and westerns and old time radio and a little bit of Star Trek, but they had two I saw sitting on the edge of forever on a big screen, meaning it was a 35 millimeter going through a projector on a big, a room screen. And something else too, maybe tribbles. But and the bloopers. I was recently going back and reading something that I wrote about seeing that the first time. And then the next time, you always went to see the bloopers at a convention because you saw them once or twice a year. It was like seeing The Wizard of Oz once a year on network TV. And then after the push of between Star Trek making it popular and then video proliferating, and people could go to cons and buy copies from dealers who were they'd find them. And once they got out, they'd make tons of copies. They might be crappy copies, but they would be copies, and people got to know them. And then you had the networks, bloopers and practical jokes. And once you had cheap TV using bloopers, some of them personal bloopers, some of them from celebrities on their shows and movies, then the gate was open. Then the floodgates were out. But yeah, Star Trek really kind of helped. And then now we got YouTube. So you've got black and white things from the 30s and 40s, early movies that sat in people's closets for years, and now they've scanned them, and they weren't even out available on the collector's market, and now they're out. I mean, obscure stuff, bloopers from commercials with people nobody knows, and they're out. So there we go. Okay. Okay, John, you're popping in here on the sidebar channel, on the side channel. A lattice formation is just a crystal. No, I mean like intact massive lattice. This is a lattice formation. It's just a crystal. Every time fans complain about Burnham, Spock gets a new secret sibling. Ding-a-ling-a-ling-a-ling. Oh, that's funny. Funny, John. And you all aren't seeing that. John is texting me. John Connor's texting me in here from the side, like he always does. He's the secret chatter of Trekland Tuesdays Live. Let's see. Lanto Jones. Oh, Ianto Jones, not Lanto, was the coffee boy secretary and later on lover of Captain Jack Harkness on Torchwood. Ooh. All righty then. Is that part of the kill the gays trope then? Is that what that was? Okay. Yes. Christoph, the near impossibility to tape and pre-record TV back then is one of the strongest arguments against moon landing deniers. Okay. What are you saying? Is it true that Lucille Ball fought 2 times for Trek? No, she fought 47 times for Trek. I mean, she wanted the studio. She put faith in the people she hired, like Herb Solo and all their people, and she put faith in them to do what they wanted to. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for this explanation. They moved it, the Trek block. They went from the front of the block to the back of the block. People complained, and they didn't want to bring up the rear after Enterprise. And so they complained and put it back. Okie dokie. Do I think that Chris Helmsworth would be on Kelvin 4? Doesn't sound like it, but we'll see. Sounds like it that if he was, they would have had some. Maybe they're saving the promo bombshell mileage for a little later, or maybe he's moved on after feeling burned. I mean, the situation is totally different. Now they have the strength of a big mega corporation, where before little Paramount on its own needed financial help. And when the Chinese pulled their money out, they didn't have that extra gravy they had promised the Chris's. That's what that was all. Every time current news says when they could not come to terms with Helmsworth and Pine. It wasn't that. It was that they promised them something, and then they had to go back and renegotiate lower because they lost some of their backing. And the guys said, like, what are you kidding? If it gets out that we've come in for lower, then everybody will want us to be, then we're undercutting our value. And it's not like their mom was directing. There was no personal stake in the movie for them. So that everybody would go, oh, well, it was their Uncle Fred was the director. Of course they would. It's their one chance to work with him. No, there was nothing sentimental or personal about it. So they couldn't let the world see that they would just, you know what? We'll go down our fee by a third here in the best times of our lives to make money. Yeah. How are we doing with the chat here? Okay. Rusty, your nephew hated old Trek but loved new Trek Kelvin, but he's young and stupid. Here's what I say, Rusty. We have a lot of younger people who think that 60s Trek or even the 80s and 90s Trek is slow and yada yada. But then I want to say, but would they also say the same thing about name a classic? Bridge on the River Kwai, Patton, Casablanca? Would they say the same thing about anything made before they were born? Well, then it's a function of just let them have a little more life experience. Let them get married, get divorced, have a kid, lose a kid, have a dog, lose a dog, have a cellet, lose a cellet. Let them have a little more life experience, make some money, lose some money, have a car wreck, be in the hospital. Let's let them get worn down around the corners and then see what they say. Let's also let 10 years go by and have some kid call them old, and then we'll see what they think. It's not going anywhere. It'll still be there. Mm-hmm. And there you go. He's filming. Well, we had the question last week about Chris Pine filming, but if he's out by October, November, he's directing. So we'll see. That's why now people are saying, are you really going to make that December 2023 date, or will it push over into the spring? Or will it be another rushed movie for a date? There we go. Okay, well, we got this whole Torchwood thing going here on the side. Okay. Questions, actual questions. Questions. You blame Mike Okuda for touchscreens. Well, but come on, Rusty. 2360s touchscreens are okay. It's the 2250s I had a question about. Hi, Glinda. Glad you could join us. They're actually... Oh, wait, what? That's how we've retconned it, Glenn. The eugenics war, it was just a secret war by eugenically driven people. Exactly. Yeah. With all the conflicts in the 90s, can't we fit some behind the scenes war in there? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the actual fuel is matter and antimatter, which is replenishable. Matter is stuff. Antimatter is the oppositely charged stuff. Well, you notice they don't run around having treaties and having wars over dilithium like the original series did. So there we go. Okay, sure. For what it's worth, the Kindle version of Nemesis by J.M. Dillard is on sale today. Oh, Rebecca, it's never too late when you show up. It's all good. It's all good. We're cross-ponding once again, everybody. You do know that everything Trekland live, Tuesdays live, and Saturdays with life support live, and especially the Portales, everything is global. To answer a question, Linda, no. Janet she wasn't script supervisor. That's script supervisor is the glorified prompter. They're the glorified prompter with the book, but they're also timing and keeping up with every take and what the differences are. And they're the first line of defense on continuity. Oops, sorry, you had that in your hand, not in your pocket when we start this take. Or the shot we shot 2 days ago that leads into this. You walked out of the door and now you're coming in this room. You had that in your left hand. I mean, they're the people that are keeping up with all that. Much less doing a code for timing and what take was what and what was bad. Take one was bad. Take two was pretty good, but you've got the tail on this one. You can't use the beginning, but they keep track of all that. What Janet did was she was the assistant script coordinator, which was Lolita's job, and Eric before her, and Maggie after her, and Juan after that. And I got on Twitter with the script coordinator for one of the shows currently. I haven't lived with them all for 5 years yet. Janet was assistant script coordinator in the offices back with the writers. The script supervisor is on stage with the book and helps people with lines and continuity and writing down, which was Cosmo Genovese for ages. I want to say the original series guy was George Rucker, was either the script supervisor or he was the clapper. But if you watch some of those early bloopers and Denise says, Cosmo, what was my line? It's Cosmo Genovese. And then when he retired, Jan Rudolph and Judy Brown kind of split up among the shows. Judy worked with Jonathan on his 2 movies. I know that. So Connor and Malcolm on Enterprise are not talking about Janet. They're probably talking, if they said Jan, they're probably talking about Jan Rudolph, who's been a Portal 47 guest, as some of you know. I'm working on Judy. We're trying to get Judy on either Trek Files or Portal 47. The human parents named their kid Michael. No. 22nd, 23rd century. All things evolve. Okay, chat. Well, you know what I mean. If a whole planet, if they're males, it's not just males, is it? B'Elanna was subject to Ponfar. See, I'm thinking Ponfar doesn't occur to Romulans because Romulans have let themselves be emotional and don't suppress it over the centuries, over the millennia. Okay, now we're into deep diving Vulcan stuff, which has been front and center Star Trek interest since the beginning. So it was always there. Thank you, Glenn. That's just what I thought, even though years and years and years ago, they might have even changed it. Oh, why, hello, Elsie. You first met me at a con when you were a teenager, awkwardly at the booth, too nervous to say. You drew me in and were so kind. Haven't met at multiple cons since the love is real. Okay, well, yay. Okay, well, you can still be enigmatic, but okay. Hi, Susan here. Yep, I have to listen to it. I hadn't had a chance because Sunday was day 2 of Gallifrey, and then we're off. And yeah, it was going to be piece the action. Yeah. As much as I was excited for a Tarantino version, it seemed very narrow-minded to me. It seemed very kind of like, let's find one shiny thing and run with it and blow it up and not even be like a total tangent and have nothing to do with maybe even its own timeline and not refer to anything established. Kind of be a waste of time to me. So I don't know. But this is kind of what's come out since. We'll eventually get the script somewhere, and you're living in the Hunger Games in the UK. No more quarantine, no free testing, no masks, okay. But they're partying it up in Downing Street, huh? Yep. Okay, now we're into the COVID time of the show. Stephen, that would be awesome. This occurred to me once or twice. I don't know if I've seen, is this a mounding wave? Because they've got 3 or 4 months. They've still got plenty of time to tweak an opening title. They've got lots of time to have him do a Space the Final Frontier opening. It took 6 weeks to get 30 cheap but good in 92. I've gone blank. The good masks from a reputable company that we saw at a good price early in February, early in January. Ordered them January 8th. It took 6 weeks to get here. And I knew the company wasn't a fly-by-night company. It just took 6 weeks. Maybe they were on a barge off Long Beach for half of that time. I don't know. But there we go. You'd cry like a baby if Anson does an opening voiceover. You're spelling it wrong. It's Jon, so you're safe. I'm safe. And he's helped me out tons of times with Mac things. Okay, but now I've introduced the Terminator thread here. Okay, and now we've got the German, the Austrian. Who would Schwarzenegger play in Star Trek? I don't know. He could just be a big one of the big thug races, right? He could take up some Dom Jot. That would be perfect. You're enjoying season 1 to 3, and it's good, but you fell asleep watching Bridge on the River Kwai. How could you with that whistling? Colonel Hathie's what? When you were on a bus 10 years ago and people called you sir. Yes. Watching something the other day where the woman was saying she was being called ma'am, and it threw her. Okay. Into the chat, gang. Into the chat. Are we getting there? Are we getting there? Zahir, an actual question. What would I like to see happen in Picard season 2? I mean 3. I mean whatever season we're on. What would I like to see happen? Well, I know what they're doing. They're doing an alternate universe time travel back to our current day, but in a grimier, grittier universe. And somewhere along that continuum are Q and Whoopi, or Guinan, which makes sense. I would like to eventually, not gratuitously, get all of the next gen cast involved, and actually people from DS9 and Voyager 2, if it makes sense for the story. It would be great to have. I'd like to see what's going on in the universe at the turn of the 25th century, and see some kind of it doesn't have to be anally about Cardassians and Romulans and Klingons and Borg and Ferengi and where things are, but it would be nice to have some hanging on the back walls. I think we get it, but I think it's all going to be in the twisted, weird universe, so it won't be actual crime, so it won't be any help. It'll be a nice story, but it won't help with anything, knowing where the universe is. What would I like to see happen in Picard? I have low expectations. I'd like to see some people and hear about what's going on in the local space neighborhood. Other than that, it's, go with it. I'd like to see all the characters used and developed a little bit more. I wonder how much when they design these characters for a season 1 story, if they're actually thinking, okay, and then the next season, when we don't need Rios to be this or Raffi to be this or Girardi to be this, that they can go on and be this. We can take them here. So whether Raffi and Seven still wind up being a couple or not, I don't know if that was a late season thing. You can tell, though. Obviously, all the Romulan interlopers were 1 season people and won't be back. Maybe. Okay. Glenn, you're not the first one to do this. Anti-mantra and Uncle Matter. In fact, I said this the other day at Gallifrey in the green room to somebody. Yes, it's Uncle Matter. What does the Uncle Matter? Okay. Yes, but that's it. It should be in the credits. We should be able to look and see who the 1982 script supervisor was. No, if they said Jan, they would have said Janet, and it wouldn't be. That was Jan. It was Jan Rudolph. So there you go. See, that's a Portal 47 level question for free, Linda.
Oh, no. Yeah. The world has changed in the last year. Okay. It's the end of the chat as we know it. Thank you. Schwarzenegger as a Packlid? Not, yeah. It's a K, by the way. Um, Disc Space, the final frontier. These Starship. Oh, Glenn, you're always on. Yeah, Captain Calvin, I mixed them up. It's the other march. It's the other march. That's the Colonel Hathaway march from Jungle Book. Colonel Bogey's march. That's what it is from Bridge on the River Kwai. He's still going. I know. Let's see. Okay, less death. Okay, blah blah blah. There we go, gang. I guess that's gonna do it for today. Did we have enough tangents in there? Is the whole idea of ideas that poked at me? Got to learn not to leave the last comment on the screen for the end. The vibe I got from the convention is soon going to not be so fresh anymore. We will go back to having blurs of things, and hopefully things are happening. A lot of my convention plans are still up in the air, depending on different things, backers and sponsors, and what's the con doing, and are they going to be virtual or whatever. But hopefully we will be all back out there again. Okay. I think that's going to do it. Enough tangents to make a Dyson sphere. How do you make a Dyson sphere? Well, you jump out and you say svaboo. Okay. Oh, Zahir, you're not going to get me Saturday. I'm not going to do that without Ali here. We are not going to go in the bar with Damar and Kanar. That's a bridge too far. Speaking of bridges. So there's a teaser for Saturday. And speaking of teasing, I want to not tease the fact that I really appreciate all of our Patreon folk again for helping us out. If you want to do that, if you want to jump in, it's very easy. It's at patreon.com/TreklandLive. If you've never done a Patreon, it's easy. Mine is a subscription model, not project. So $5-10. It's easy to jump in there. Once again, a reminder, Trek Files, we're in our 8th season. We're like 3rd week in now. There is a Discord channel coming very soon. I think it's up there. I'm going to get the stuff and announce it, and we'll do some special promotion for it. But if you're a Discord person, and if you've been a little frustrated with how it's hard to have communication on Facebook around Trek Files, we're going to open up another front on that community communication over on Discord for the Trek Files. All Trekland issues, but Trek Files is going to drive it. The Trek Files is on Facebook, and it's up this week again. David Livingston is back to talk about the selection and hiring, the care and feeding of directors on series then and now. And of course, I just teased it a little bit there, but Life Support Live will be back this Saturday with Dr. Ali and Dr. Trek. One of us is a real doctor. Love for you to join us at 10 a.m. Saturdays Pacific, 1 Eastern, 6 UK time, 7 Central European time. Come in and join us. Wherever you're watching now, on all of these Trekland channels. Very true. And of course, I'm Larry Nemechek on Twitter. It's Larry Nemechek's Trekland, where you are right now. Like and subscribe it on YouTube. If you're not there right now, please go over and do it. And Instagram too. I have a lot of fun with Instagram these days. And of course, if you want to join in, if you want to jump in for the best deep driving, I cannot talk suddenly. If you want to jump in for the best deep diving of Star Trek around portal47.net, come in and join up with all the Portales, and hopefully we'll all be enjoying what the live convention scene looks like as we come out of this, and what it does, and what the virtual leftover, what the residual effect of Zoom is going to be on fandom. It's not going anywhere either. As for me, I've been doing this for 5 years live every Tuesday, coming up on that, and 6 years with the Portales. Good old free conference call. We were doing that in 2015, folks. It'll be 7 years this next open house in the fall. So, yeah. Thanks for joining us again. Who knows what news is going to come down the pike? I had to say it, I guess. But thanks for joining us here as we all gear up for whatever Star Trek in the world is going to bring us. Everybody, please, please, please stay safe. Do all the things. Stay woke. Check your sources. And Trek well, everybody. T Public, Trekland-store